Well, next week is our celebration Sunday when we make our financial commitments to the church's ministry in 2019. Normally, that's when we have our church-wide dinner, but last year and this year we're doing it with our bicentennial celebration. So no dinner next week unless somebody wants to cook for us, okay? We'll have 2 worship services, and at the end you'll be invited to make your commitment. Don't be afraid. Nobody's going to compel you or stand over you to make a commitment. Come anyway, even if you don't do that. And during October, I've been preaching on stewardship using a resource by Adam Hamilton titled Enough, subtitled Discovering Joy Through Simplicity and Generosity. And we've used a lot of Adam Hamilton studies in our church. You know, he's the pastor of the Church of the Resurrection. I've told the story before, but he started that church right out of seminary, and they met in a funeral home. And he thought, what better name could you give to a church that meets in a funeral home than the Church of the Resurrection? I've also mentioned maybe on one occasion or two that he attended Perkins School of Theology at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas, and we were there at the same time even though we didn't know each other. And last week I did say I would see if I could pull up some old pictures, so I found my 1985 pictorial directory. We called them the lookbook at Perkins. And here are Adam Hamilton and I in the 1985 lookbook, 33 years ago. We haven't changed a bit, have we? And 30 years ago, if you could have picked out your pastor, would you want the neat-looking dork on the left or the wild-haired guy on the right, you know? We've changed a bit in 33 years. Kind of neat to look back and think of where we started. Well, I want to focus today on a couple of verses from Scripture. This is from the letter to the Hebrews in the New Testament, where it says this: keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So we can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can anyone do to me? And I particularly want to focus on the first half of verse 5, which says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Could we say that together? Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Among many of my vices and bad habits is that I like to watch reality television shows. Now, I'm not into the Kardashians or Big Brother or Teen Mom or anything like that. No, I like stuff like Cops. Bad boy, what they gonna do, what they're gonna do when they come for you. There's also a new one called Live PD. They actually broadcast live as the police are doing stuff. Occasionally I watch American Pickers. Don't watch as much as I used to. They find old stuff and dig it out of people's barns and houses and figure out what it's worth. Still occasionally we'll watch Pawn Stars. Maybe you've seen Pawn Stars before. That's P-A-W-N, Pawn Stars, that I watch on TV. And one of my favorite shows I watched many years ago, it's now in reruns and it's on some obscure cable channel, but it's a show called Cheaters, in which they catch spouses in the act of infidelity. I love Cheaters. I don't know why. But occasionally, I will still tune in to a show on A&E that is called Hoarders. Does anyone else want to confess to watching Hoarders? Okay, there are a few. You know, these are folks who can't seem to throw away anything. And their stuff in their homes literally begins to suffocate them. If you haven't seen the TV show, it's kind of like watching a train wreck. You know, it's awful, it's terrible, hate to look at it, but can't resist watching. I remember one episode when family and friends began to excavate the home of a woman who'd been a long-time hoarder, and as they went through layers and layers of stuff, most of it quite literally trash, they found several dead pet cats beneath all the rubbish in her house. Can you imagine? Trust me, it was very gross. I loved it. I don't mean to make light of it, because excessive hoarding is rooted in mental illness, and it's often associated with obsessive compulsive disorder. Psychology Today puts it this way: hoarding both relieves anxiety and produces it. The more hoarders accumulate, the more insulated they feel from the world and its dangers. Of course, the more they accumulate, the more isolated they become from the world, including family and friends. Even the thought of discarding or cleaning out hoarded items produces extreme feelings of panic and discomfort. somehow all that stuff that surrounds them seems to ease their anxiety and help them cope with the world around them, while ironically at the same time producing more anxiety and more separation from others. Now, I hesitated to include this in the sermon because some of you who've been into my office may accuse me of being a hoarder, okay? I may need some professional help, to be perfectly honest. Adam Hamilton suggests that there is a spiritual disease that many, if not most of us, suffer from. He calls it restless heart syndrome. And he describes it in this way. Its primary symptom is discontent. We find that we are never quite satisfied with anything. The moment we acquire something, we scarcely take time to enjoy it before we want something else. We are perennially discontent. It is a syndrome that, if left unchecked, can destroy us. In a way, it's kind of like hoarding, and we look to stuff to alleviate our anxiety and to help us feel better. And while it may bring temporary relief, in the end, it always fails to provide the deep contentment that we are longing for deep down inside of us. Many of you are probably familiar with the classic prayer of St. Augustine from the 5th century, in which he says, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in you." You see, restless heart syndrome is nothing new. Our souls are never truly satisfied until they're filled with God, until they rest in God and discover God's peace. And the Apostle Paul, who by no means led an easy life, said this as he likely awaited execution in a Roman prison. He said, "I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I've learned to be content with whatever I have." And Paul then adds this. Next verse he says, "I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength." He knew Christ as his source. My brothers and sisters, have you learned to be content with whatever you have, whether it's a little or a lot? Honestly, I myself struggle with that. Have you discovered, do you really understand that true and lasting contentment is found only in God? That our strength, our purpose in life, our satisfaction comes only through knowing Christ in our lives? That the only effective and lasting remedy for restless heart syndrome is to know God? Adam Hamilton provides 4 interesting suggestions to help us cultivate a sense of contentment in our lives. First, this one's kind of funny. He says, remember that it could be worse. Seriously. He says this is essentially the practice of looking on the bright side or finding the silver lining. It is recognizing that no matter what we may not like about a thing or a person or a circumstance, we can always find something good to focus on if we will only choose to do so. Another way of saying it might be to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Second, ask yourself, how long will this make me happy? Hamilton says, so often we buy something thinking it will make us happy, only to find that the happiness lasts about as long as it takes to open the box. He tells of visiting his brother several years ago and watching him play a game on a PlayStation 2. Adam later told his wife, LaVon, that he really wanted to get a PlayStation 2. And she said, who are you kidding? You're not going to play it. You don't have the time to do it. Sounds like my wife, right? But he assured her that he really would, so Adam saved up his money, he went to the mall, and he bought a brand new PlayStation 2 with 4 video games. He says that was several years ago, and to this day, I played only one half of one game. One day, he says, the whole kit and caboodle will be in a rummage sale for 10 or 15 bucks. Before you buy something, ask, how long will this make me happy? Third, Hamilton suggests, develop a grateful heart. Gratitude, he says, is essential if we're going to be content in life. Another Psychology Today article I came across says that gratitude opens the door to more relationships. It improves physical and psychological health. It enhances empathy, reduces aggression, increases sensitivity toward others, helps you sleep better, improves your self-esteem, and increases mental strength. Indeed, gratitude itself is a very strong antidote to restless heart syndrome. Fourth and finally, Hamilton says we must also ask ourselves, where does my soul find true satisfaction? I've already spoken of this. Deep, soul-satisfying contentment is found in God and in God alone. Our hearts really are restless until they find their rest and their peace in God. Now, Hamilton goes on to say a lot more, and if you've heard Adam Hamilton, you know that's the case, but he talks about how simplicity is an important key in cultivating contentment. I'm not going to talk about all his points, but I have listed them in a bulletin insert for you to read. I'll quickly run through them. He says, set a goal of reducing your consumption and choose to live below your means. Before making a purchase, ask yourself, do I really need this and why? Why do I want this? Use something up before buying something new. Plan low-cost entertainment that enriches. And ask yourself, are there any major changes that would allow me to simplify my life? You know, I began this series by telling the story of some friends in Carrier Mills who downsized, sold, and gave away most of their stuff and moved into a tiny house of 570 some odd square feet. And it works for them. And they've experienced some joy in their lives in a simpler way of living than they've ever had before. So you might take some time to ponder and consider these suggestions because it is some very good and practical advice. But the other ingredient that's missing is the most important, which is self-control. It's one thing, to talk about this money advice and putting it into practice, but it requires self-control if we really are going to try to keep our lives free from the love of money. I mentioned at the first service, I've been on Weight Watchers for about 1.5 years now, and it's not a gimmick to lose weight. It's a way of helping you grow in your self-discipline. Watching what you eat, how much you eat, how healthy the stuff you eat is. It's just about self-discipline. The book of Proverbs suggests that like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. You're vulnerable to anything and everything. And Hamilton suggests that self-control is about forgoing instant gratification by stopping to think about the answers to 3 important questions. What are the long-term consequences of this action? Is there a higher good or a better outcome if I use this resource of time, money, or energy in another way? And finally, will this action honor God? I'm not really sure the monkey paintings I've purchased honor God, but they still bring me great joy. I will say that. Now, as we take what we've learned and talked about this month about the role of money in our lives, next week we're going to explore generosity, and it is next Sunday. You'll be invited to make a financial commitment to the ministry of the First United Methodist Church for 2019. You're invited to respond to this question. We put this before you every year. What percentage of my income is God calling me to give? And your response is going to require thoughtfulness, it's going to require prayer, and it will probably require some self-discipline as you make this commitment, which honors God. So please be thinking about this week. I want to close with a couple of quotes. And the first is from one of my favorite theologians. You may be familiar with him, Mr. Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. The late, great Fred Rogers said this: "The older I get, the more I come to understand that the things we possess can never bring us ultimate happiness. Contrary to what's implied in commercials, nothing we buy can ever take away our loneliness or fill our emptiness or heal our brokenness. You know yourself way down deep that what really matters is how we live this life with our neighbors, those whom we happen to be with at the moment. That's what really matters. That's really all that matters." Amen? The second quote came in the form of a meme that a friend posted on Facebook just this past week. It says, as you get older, you'll realize that a $300 watch and a $30 watch both tell the same time. A Michael Kors wallet and a Forever 21 wallet hold the same amount of money. A $300,000 house and a $100,000 house host the same loneliness. A Ford will also drive you as far as a Bentley. True happiness is not found in materialistic things. It comes from the love and laughter found with each other. So stay humble. The holes dug for us in the ground are all the same size. Again today, I want to close by inviting you, if you're comfortable doing this, put your hands out on your lap, palms face up, and together, could we join in quietly praying together this prayer? Lord, cure us of restless heart syndrome. We are truly sorry for the times when we have been ungrateful for the gifts you have given us. Help us to have a deep longing for you and your will for our lives. Give us the desire to pursue righteousness, holiness, justice, and love. Help us to simplify our lives and to find our peace in you. We ask these mercies in your holy name. Amen. Remember our app, our website, findhopedowntown.org, through which you can give, stay connected, or watch sermon videos that you might have missed.